In the late 80s, the world changed. The Berlin Wall came down, the internet started to take off, the Cold War ended. And in the middle of those exciting and hectic times, two friends from Switzerland, Liden Denz and Sven Liden, students from the quiet and peaceful town of St. Gallen, decided to visit St. Petersburg. Inspired by the changes initiated by Gorbachev, they had visited a couple of Eastern European countries before, but were now ready to discover what Ronald Reagan once described as the evil empire, or as Liden Denz called it, the real thing, Russia. So early in '92, shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Sven Liden and Liden Denz arrived in St. Petersburg and realized that the changing times offered opportunities and that setting up a business in Russia became a possibility. One of their university contacts needed more international students. That clicked with the two young enthusiastic adventurers. Rather than sending students to the university, Liden Denz was set up as a private language school in the summer of 1992. They had one classroom and 12 students who were recruited via blackboards.
So basically we started printing leaflets and just distributing them in Swiss universities. So that's also why in the beginning we only had Swiss students. And I think the biggest misjudgment we did was that when we did that in the beginning, we had huge success. Basically, we got like, I think, a dozen people coming just with a few leaflets for the first summer. So we thought, oh, this is an easy business. We should really do this professionally. And the next year, we invested a lot in brochures, marketing, and stuff like that. And we had like 2 students more than the year before. So, so that was a bit of a disappointment and made it very hard to reach break even, which took quite a while.
Without any knowledge of the education industry, substantial funds, or any experience in running a business, things were not looking good. By the end of '94, even though they had doubled the numbers of students to a record-breaking 25, Liden Denz was about to run out of money. Sven Liden eventually returned to Switzerland to get a real job, so on the business side, things weren't looking too bright for the young company. But Walter's intention was to stay in Russia, and he had his eyes fixed on the light at the end of the tunnel. In this challenge, he was highly supported and motivated by a young, beautiful woman, Natalia, a native of St. Petersburg, who, to this day, has never moved from his side. The turnaround was initiated by a certain James Swift, founder of LAL, in those days, one of the largest educational agencies in Germany. James felt that the timing was right to add Russian to their portfolio of languages and trusted the Swiss company to get it right. James Swift became a mentor for the young school and helped to professionalize Liden Denz.
When I first met Walter at his school, it was quite clear that they were in the beginning of an interesting challenge, but had a lot to do, particularly with the marketing, the professionalism of the marketing, particularly in a country with which a lot of agents certainly had no great knowledge, and therefore a certain amount of suspicion perhaps as to whether a school in the middle of Russia could produce the same kind of quality as other schools in other countries with a tradition of language teaching.
In the following years, Liden Denz grew slowly but steadily in a challenging environment. Yeltsin was in power, the political situation was unstable, the economy was shaky, and nobody knew what the future would bring for Russia and a small language school in St. Petersburg. Nonetheless, things were further improving for Liden Denz in '97 when they earned their first international accreditation and were allowed to join IALC, the International Association of Language Centers. The meltdown of the Russian economy in 1998 destroyed the fledgling middle class and the ruble nosedived. But as L&D's earnings were mostly in US dollars, for the first time in its history, the company managed to put some money aside and invested in its business, taking a more long-term view. In the same year, Swiss television appeared on the radar. After 2 weeks of shooting, a 1-hour documentary was ready to be shown on primetime in Switzerland, later in Germany and Austria. The movie was a success. More appearances on TV both in Russia and Switzerland were to follow. With the economy bottoming out, Liden Denz ventured into outbound tour operating, setting up the Swiss House of Travel in the year 2000. In 2002, another milestone was reached, 10 years of doing business in Russia. It was also the year when Liden Denz won the bid to run the IALC workshop. 2 years later, key agents came to St. Petersburg to meet all EALC member schools for an extraordinary event that today is still labelled by many as legendary. The 2004 EALC workshop turned out to be a pivotal moment and helped Liden Denz to establish itself as the market leader for teaching Russian in Russia. Hosting an international event of that size prompted Liden Denz to open its second centre in Moscow just before the conference. In 2005, a young intern joined the team. Still a student when she started, that intern quickly moved on to the positions of marketing assistant, marketing executive, and center director in Moscow. Meet Yulia Vovodina, the CEO of Liden Denz. What started in 1992 with students coming only from Swiss universities gradually became a global network. In the years following the millennium, the company mainly grew through agencies recruited at educational B2B events. Enter ISEF and enter Berlin. Liden Denz has attended the world's largest and most important student recruitment event every year since 2003. In 2007, the prestigious international accreditation body Equals accepted Liden Denz as its first ever Russian member. The Equals seal of approval confirmed the school's world-class standards of teaching and gave Liden Denz a framework for the best quality assurance system currently available in our industry. It was in August 2008 at the Park Lane Hilton Hotel in London where Liden Denz won the much-coveted Study Travel Award in the category World Language Provider for the first time. 4 more awards were to follow. By that time, Liden Denz was the preferred supplier of a large number of multinationals, embassies, consulates and international NGOs working in Russia. Of particular importance were foreign correspondents of the international press, many of whom touched base in Russia through a language teacher of Liden Denz. Meanwhile, on the international front, the company enjoyed continuous support from an ever-growing number of loyal agents operating in over 60 countries by 2012. This magnificent network of so many business partners culminated with the entry of L&D into the Study Travel Hall of Fame, the result of winning the ST Award 5 times in a row. In 2014, Liden Denz branched out to beautiful Riga, offering Russian language courses directly in the EU. The plan was to offer an alternative to those students who either did not want or could not come to Russia to study the language. As it turned out, the timing for the opening was perfect. That same year saw the first edition of I Love Russian, a modern textbook written by Liden Denz teachers encapsulating their approach of teaching Russian and already in use by the University of Manchester, the University of St. Gallen and other prestigious higher education institutions. In 2015, Liden Denz St. Petersburg moved into a purposely built brand new location in a prime spot between the Philharmonia and the historical shopping arcade Passager next to the Grand Hotel Europe, the Russian Museum, and very close to numerous theatres, restaurants, cafes and bars. In a challenging environment, standing still is not an option. 2017 will see the publication of 2 new textbooks, the rollout of the first blended learning platform for Russian, and the opening of a new centre in Siberia. A quarter of a century after very modest beginnings, in 2017, over 2,000 students from 70 countries will enjoy Russian lessons in one of the 4 Liden Denz campuses.